101.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Are we live?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for joining us today for this special meeting of Albany, California Social and Economic Justice Commission. We appreciate your attendance and look forward to hearing from you as we begin the meeting. Before we move into the agenda, we should take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we're gathered. For thousands of years, this land has been Huichin and surrounding areas, including parts of the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo Ohlone and the B'Maiwak, recognized in the Verona Band of Alameda County, whose descendants now include members of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people and other peoples, and they have remained, and the Ohlone people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. We are honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. I also want to take a moment and express all of our sympathy and condolences for people in more directly in the pathway of the fire. Our hopes that the fires abate, our gratitude for the people, both official and unofficial, who are helping, and our sympathy for all the people around here who are suffering with the air quality. So we appreciate your attendance. With this, we'll bring together the special meeting of the Social and Economic Justice Committee of Albany. The first item of business is the roll call. So I can just call on people, unless Sitter Isabel, you would rather be the person to, or is it usually one of you all who calls on them? I think
I could do that. I could do that. Commissioner Gary?
Present.
Commissioner Grossman?
Here.
Commissioner Kerr?
Here.
Commissioner Marks?
Here.
Chair Downs?
Here. Thank you, Sid. Our next item of business is the approval of minutes for our August 4th meeting. The draft minutes, like the entire agenda, are linked on the Albany website for the Social and Economic Justice Commission. And it includes hyperlinks to the supporting documents, in this case, including the minutes of the special meeting on Wednesday, August the 4th at 7 p.m. Do we want to take a minute and then entertain any questions or discussion of those minutes or motions? Commissioner Grossman.
I move acceptance.
Is there a second? Commissioner Kerr, any further discussion?
No further discussion, but I'd simply like to request that we, as a community, would benefit greatly from a more annotized summary of the minutes and the actions of each meeting we have, and of all the meetings that are part of the city's proceedings. So my second stands without amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. This is also something we should note that Commissioner Grossman, I think, is related to the point that he brought up last meeting, and that we can make sure that we have as an agenda item for our next regular meeting on September 1 for discussion of what's possible on communication around those. Other discussion? All right, so shall we vote? I'm sorry, my mind is slipping after so many Zooms today. Do I call the vote? I think you do. I do. Okay. One by one, because of the ways that the Zoom sound compression can blur voices. Commissioner Grossman?
Aye.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
Commissioner Gary?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the meeting, the minutes of the August 4th meeting carry. And we are now on to public comment for members of the public desiring to address the commission on an item not on the agenda. We will call you in after you're after you're moved in. You'll see a clock for 3 minutes that the city clerk provides as a guide. The Brown Act limits the commission's ability to take in or discuss items that are not on the agenda. So such items are normally referred to staff for comment or for future agendas. And if you're wishing to speak on the items on the agendas, especially the items 6, 1, 2, 3, and 4, we'll be taking public comment at that time on those specific items. So this is primarily a moment for public comment on other items. I see Jeremiah Pinguelo, and it looks like you have been waved in, so you're on.
Hi, thank you. It's kind of interesting. My minute starts at 2 minutes and 50 seconds, but that's fine. You know, social and economic justice obviously is very important in the city of Albany. It's basically one of the only committees that meet regularly. All the other committees get canceled. So I just want to say thank you, Social Economic Justice Committee, for following through and having these meetings. It's the only way to keep the community together. I would like to say I'm very proud to see Member Gary running for city council. I'm looking forward to that. And our city still does not have a place to take a shower. It's kind of sad. I mean, you guys still refer people to go to Berkeley, to go to Willard homeless showers. That's still not right. How is a homeless person from Albany supposed to get to Berkeley, to Willard? You guys issuing out bus passes? How is somebody supposed to get all the way to Willard, walk? And by the time they take a shower in Berkeley, and by the time they get back to Albany, they're all sweaty because they just walked 2 miles to go take a shower. So you have no way for these people to get to the shower. You guys didn't really think this through very well. You know, I had a solution so many months ago. It was only going to cost $1,000. It was a portable shower, like a porta potty. You guys did nothing. You're still paying $100 a day to put homeless people in hotel rooms. That's $3,000 a month. You could rent a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo, 555 Pierce Street, Gateview, for $2,400. There's no social economic justice in that. That doesn't make sense. You're going to spend $3,000 to put a homeless person in a hotel, but yet you could afford a condo, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit for $2,400. You guys are getting ripped off. And this is a waste of money. This is not organized. This is terrible. I came up with so many solutions, and it's just terrible. So please rethink this. You guys got to get a shower. I still haven't showered since March 9th. So please do what you can to open the Albany Aquatic Center, and I would love to help the shower program continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Appreciate it. Not seeing other public comment at this time. We will move on to announcements from either staff and commission members. Do we have announcements first from staff?
Yes, I have an announcement, a brief announcement on an update on community outreach. During the recent public meetings that we've received concerns about posting of events and public meetings announcement. And in response, we've started to post at the kiosk located on Solano and Curtis. The kiosk is not an official posting location, but we will strive to post as many meeting event notices there as possible. We had staff go in and remove all the old announcements and just prepare the kiosk to receive the new postings and event flyers as they become available. So we've also included in the city's e-news, which is sent out every Friday via email, a new section called Social Equity and Inclusion to house current information on this topic, including the citywide impact plan that the SCJC is working on. We've also started to once again list upcoming advisory body meetings in the weekly e-news. Finally, we've added a new social equity and inclusion e-notify box topic to the city's e-notification system. So to receive notices on this topic, residents need to go to the city's e-notification link and on the website and select the new social equity and inclusion box topic to start receiving notices via email. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Any other staff announcements? Not seen. Let's announcements from commission members. Are you leaning forward to make an announcement, Commissioner Kerr?
Just saying that I'm very much looking forward to the Coachella celebration that's not sponsored by the city, but it's sort of generated from involved citizens in the city. I'm hoping that our current smoke and environmental issues won't preclude that from happening, but I'm looking forward to that in a good way. And I also wanted to just reflect on and appreciate the efforts of the city to post announcements about social equity and inclusion efforts. I might suggest, although I don't know how feasible this is, but if that communication could be construed as a two-way communication with a recommendation box or a suggestion comment box or some way for the city to receive as well as distribute commentary, I would very much welcome that. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. I want to echo your thanks for the staff being responsive on the kiosk and appreciate the comments of the public and directing our attention toward other ways that we can keep communication in this unusual time. Commissioner Gary.
Yes, I just want to piggyback on what Commissioner Kerr stated about the notifications and letting the residents know what is happening in the city. I want to give staff kudos for making sure that the kiosk was updated. I used to look at that kiosk almost every week and I'm like, why do we have the same information and it was outdated? So to hear that staff made the necessary steps to, start moving in the right direction so we communicate and to the residents, I'm excited to hear that. So, I would try to think if we can come together and find some additional ways to output the information down further down in Solano. It definitely in the residents. I know they have the free library. I don't know if that's an option to put something. I'm just trying to think outside the box on how we can get it off of Solano into the residential area to make sure that residents who don't have access to social media or the internet, as they're walking, they will be able to see, something that will let them know about the meetings that we're having. So thank you so much, staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Gary. Any other commission announcements? I want to, keen-eyed observers may note that we're joined today along with our commission members and the city staff and officers in KALB, also by one of the consultants working with the city, Dr. Shelley Holt, here primarily as a observer to the meeting. But if commission members wish to direct questions or she has indicated her willingness to jump on live. So we appreciate her attendance. Seeing no other announcements, Next item on the agenda is presentations. To my knowledge, we don't have presentations for this meeting, and I think I'm seeing confirmation of that. So that takes us to item 6, which is discussion and possible action on matters related to a series of different items. We have 4 different subsections, and we'll take them one at a time in the order in which they are offered. The first itself has a number of subsections, and this is 6.1 on the Equity Impact Plan, and time for updates from the subcommittees that we formed in our last meeting, and all of which I believe have engaged in at least initial meetings with each other, potentially with the consultants, and I think the motion that we passed in August 4th asked for full status report on September 1, if I remember right, but we wanted to make time to have status reports from each of the subcommittees at this point. We can do them one at a time. So the first would be affordable housing and economic development. I think the procedure would be that we could take a report from that subcommittee, then open to public comment, then return for further discussion. We'll take the report from the subcommittee, have a moment for follow-up questions from the commission, go to public comment, then come back. Does that seem appropriate to everyone? Okay, so Affordable Housing and Economic Development Subcommittee, do we have an update there? Commissioner Kerr.
So I want to, first of all, acknowledge the work of the consultants and preparing a summary of the notes that we have been working on. I want to reflect on the work that Bart Grossman and I have done as a subcommittee, a standing subcommittee of the Social and Economic Justice Commission, and acknowledge Bart's work, his commentary in updating me and the work that had already been done. I also want to thank members of the Diverse Housing Work Group in the City of Albany, who I have personally reached out to and asked for their input. In the past 2 weeks since our last meeting, I've spent a couple hours on consultation calls with the and I have also spent maybe a couple hours, similar amount of time, reaching out to members of our community. Getting a little bit of back feed here. I don't know if you're getting it too, but if you are, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. The agenda of the Social and Economic Justice Housing Subcommittee in relation to equity has 2 primary focus areas. Those include research regarding affordable housing and identifying challenges and action steps to inform the recommendations of SEJC and the council plan that we will be creating. The second agenda item is to contribute development of racial equity, the overall racial equity framework for the city. One of the premises of our work is that we have to acknowledge our history of being an exclusionary community, and the connection between affordable housing and racial equity is immutable. And we need to be sure that as we move forward with any equity plan, affordable housing and the correction of past injustices is part of that equity plan. In terms of our very esteemed consultants have created a sort of a framework, and hopefully others will echo this framework in their reporting tonight. But the identifying equity challenges break down into 6 categories: policy, practice, resources, relationships, power dynamics. Apparently that's 5, not 6. My page. Policy challenges regarding affordable housing are that economic goals and economic create a barrier. We have to focus on grant or alternative funding sources to create affordable housing in the community.
She's breaking up a little bit. Is it just me?
No, I'm feedback as well. So I'll try to go slow. So there are policy and practice and resources. In terms of policy, maybe it's my air purifier. Let me turn that off. Okay, so I'm breathing pure smoke, but you might not get so much feedback. In terms of policy, we need to move the movement of homeless people off the bulb is very much a part of the history of housing inequity in the city of Albany, and we can't forget that. We need to remember that that is an important part of our history, and whatever we do going forward needs to incorporate and include that action. Our practice as a community, generally community understands what affordable housing is, and we have a community of 50% renters and 50% homeowners. So we need to remember as a community that we are not exclusively homeowners. There is an impression, both in terms of who serves on the council and who serves on commissions and who is the leader, considered the leaders in the community, that we all own a single family home in Albany. That is not true. And we need to recognize that there are a large number of people in the city of Albany who rent, and we need to include their voices in the housing policies going forward. The city of Albany, in terms of resources, has the ability to write grants and ensure funding for appropriate housing and to provide housing. The planning department is a big part of that, and they have a small staff. As a small city, we have a small staff everywhere. But do they have the staffing and expertise to write the grants? And if they don't have that staffing and expertise, how can we supplement that as a community? In terms of relationships, we have an equity statement that we're going to develop, and we're going to validate it, and we're going to include affordable housing as part of that relationships building within the city to finally address and systematically address racism within our community. We have some power dynamics in the city. We have otherized and created they individuals in terms of who's housed, who's not housed. We need to work on that. We need to be sure that we are not otherizing any members of our community. And finally, we need to identify dates and data collection issues with regard to this process. We can't do anything unless we hold ourselves accountable. And my request to you as a commission is that we move forward with this work and that we create accountability within our commission, within the council, and the community at large.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. Do you have either additions from Commissioner Grossman, who I think is the other member,
No,
or
no,
questions?
Commissioner Gary.
Oh, Commissioner Gary, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No worries. As Judy and I did have conversations with the consultant, we talked about the business community development. And we were able to dive in and really assess what's going on with our business district, extremely now that they are being hard hit as a result of COVID. We were able to strategize and just zone in on what is needed for our community. So on the agenda, we were able to research focus areas around the business community to identify the challenges and action steps to inform and make recommendations to the commission. We contribute development for racial equity and the framework in our plan. So the business development plan, our goal is 10 years on the goals that we want to aspire and to achieve. One, on the business development, we were looking to work to strive to have a diverse and multicultural array of businesses. And what I've been hearing just in the past couple of weeks and working with, the Solano Business Association, that communication, clear direction is what the business district and business owners need. And so I'm encouraging all of us, challenging us to speak and hear what's going on. In order for this plan to work, we need to hear their voices. We need to understand what they're going through in order for us to help them to keep the businesses and bring back the businesses that have left due to, the high cost of their lease, low income, because there's not enough foot traffic because of the stipulations that the county has placed. And then also opening the door so we can invite new businesses, increase our marketing in places and reaching out to other business owners that want to come in, giving incentives that would attract them to want to be a part of the multicultural, diverse community that we have here in Albany. So I don't want to take up too much time because I know each subcommittee wants to present something, but I just wanted to point out that, you know, our community is attractive. I know business owners who want to do business with the city of Albany. And so as a commission and as our subcommittee continues to dive into more getting the basis of how we're going to frame this plan and the subcommittee, I would just encourage our Social Economic Justice Commission to continue to, you know, be encouraged that the work is getting done, and Judy and I are continuing to make the strides to make sure that it gets done and we have a faithful outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gary. Any first questions or comments before we go to public comment? Commissioner Grossman.
Yeah, there's a comment, it's a little complicated, but I think it's important that we consider it. Of course, affordable housing is key, but it occurs to me that when I look at what's going on with affordable housing, the reality is that it's all rentals. Now, the problem with that is that it's very difficult to move forward in the world if you don't own anything. And one of the real insidious effects of redlining was really to deprive the African American community of the opportunity to accumulate capital. And home ownership, because of the benefits of home ownership, is one of the key ways that people in this society advance financially. So I think it's very important that when we think about affordable housing, we also think about a path to ownership of something, whether it be an apartment or a condominium or a house, but that it's possible for people not to be trapped into lifelong rental situations, which deprive them of the equity that somebody else is accumulating based on their payments. So I just want to throw that in, so that we don't always think about affordable housing as being permanent rentals.
Thank you, Commissioner Grossman. I see Commissioner Marks.
I just wanted to add that I think that I'd love for Albany to start a community land trust. Oakland started one like 10 years ago, and they right now own like 10 buildings in Oakland. Some of them are single family homes and some of them are multi-family complexes. But if 10 years from now, we had a trust that owned even 5 properties in Albany, I'd be thrilled. I mean, I would donate to the community trust. I think there are other citizens of Albany who would donate to a land trust. It keeps the property at an accessible rate for people, and allows poorer people to build wealth. So I'd really like it if you guys could look into that. I'm sorry I'm putting this on you, and if you don't want to do it, I understand, but I'm just putting it out there again. I feel like it's the only solution because we don't have a lot of property to build new apartment buildings here. When we're using that one piece of property we have for the Saha project. So I don't see us building a lot of new affordable housing. So we have to somehow buy the stock that we have and have it go out to people that have, less than the incomes, less than a middle class income. So that's just my thought on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. Did I see Commissioner Kerr?
Well, I just want to respond to Commissioner Grossman and Commissioner Marks in saying that I too really support the notion of a land trust. And I have some ideas and some thoughts about how we could protect historic housing within the city under the rubric of a land trust. So we have housing that was built as exclusionary housing. It's called McGregor houses. Some of us live in them. I'm in one right now. And I think that the city has an obligation both to its history and to its future to create a way to preserve that legacy, but at the same time make it affordable. So I really welcome your comments, and I'm very, very interested in pursuing that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. I think I see Commissioner Gary.
Likewise, as Commissioner Kerr said, those are awesome ideas, and that's something that we need to pursue. I know one thing that I brought up in our subcommittee meeting was developing a co-op plan in business where that will help generate jobs for our youth, those that are, trying to figure out what career. But in that, it will give or pave way for our residents, that our younger generation, to eventually take ownership of that restaurant. They can continue to grow, develop the skills they need, train workers. There's a whole thing a plan that we can put in place that will, give them ownership of having businesses. So I am looking into that training and different opportunities where we could possibly implement that plan within our city. I think it will help with the growth of our business as well.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Gary. I just have one question, building off of what Commissioner Kerr said about the importance that we all share of thinking about how to build accountability. What could you imagine that this subcommittee could have a goal of being able to report progress on for the September 1 meeting? What do you think is in your short-term horizon for where to go next in these discussions? Commissioner Kerr?
I would imagine on the short term that what we really need to focus on is whether or not the city of Albany is moving expeditiously toward meeting our regional housing accommodations for affordable housing. We have come nowhere near close to creating the amount of affordable housing that we need within our city. I think that just for us to focus on that with the land trust issue and the condominium development, the San Pablo corridor development, to include affordable housing, all of those things will contribute to creating an environment in which we can meet our affordable housing recommendations. So I think we need to tag onto the general plan, and we need to tag onto the housing plan, and we need to really hold ourselves accountable to creating affordable housing in the numbers that have been recommended by the regional housing guidelines.
Thanks so much. Are we ready to move to public comment, and then we'll return for further discussion by the commission? This is time for members of the public who wish to comment upon the agenda item, which is 6.1. Part 1, the Affordable Housing and Economic Development Subcommittee of the Equity Impact Plan Subcommittee. So I see one member of the public, and we can start to bring in Jeremiah Penguelo. If others wish to be recognized, please raise your hands.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Yeah, so my grandfather, Floyd Garrett, he used to go down to the Albany Bulb, gosh, maybe 10 years ago. Every Thursday, he would go to Costco and get 2 or 3 pizzas and bring it down to the Bulb and feed all the homeless people. And I went down there one time with him, just as his grandson. And boy, all those homeless people, they were so happy to get a slice of pizza. And every Thursday, they were actually waiting. I mean, he came at a certain time, but they were all waiting, and he would give them propane tanks or whatever, like water supplies they needed to survive. And my grandfather used to be the deacon of the church on the corner, so he's a Baptist. But anyway, obviously, if we don't have many land parcels available, so the only thing you could do is build up. Well, I was going to save it for the future city council. I was going to suggest Albany having a BART station, but right there on Key Route, we have all that grass area, and it's great to play football or frisbee. Right there. The wrestling team, we used to run up and down the grass area as exercise, but on Key Route Boulevard, there's all that grass, and I'm not sure what it's zoned as, if it's zoned as a median or it's zoned as a park. What is that key root grass area zoned as? Are we able to put some tiny homes in the middle of that grass area, small units? Boy, there's 3-4 blocks. Wait, that goes all the way down. Yeah, that goes all the way down Washington somewhere. So there's this big grass area and it's an open space. And that could be a spot to put some housing, affordable housing right there on Key Route Boulevard in the middle of the street. So I don't know if whose land that is, but I'm kind of curious what that's zoned as, and maybe we could check that out. And it could be a possibility for affordable housing. I wanted to put a BART station there because I figured a BART station would bring a lot of money to Albany and bring a lot of business to Solano, and the BART station would fit right there on Key Route, and the parking could go underneath. But anyway, yeah, so that could be affordable housing right there on Key Route in Albany. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I think the next person I saw, I believe, was Rosemary Malarkey. And I think that the city clerk is waving you in, and you're on. Thank you.
I'm on. Thank you.
You're on.
I just actually was hoping, can you hear me? If I could, maybe Commissioner Kerr could tell where's the best place for me to find the regional guidelines for the affordable housing? Get myself up to speed on that.
I can tell you.
Thank you.
What? I'm sorry, Judy, do you want to respond?
Well, in public commentary, I'm not sure we can respond, but I'd be happy to have that information available. This isn't a dialogue. This is unfortunately,
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
I'll control myself. You should mute me.
Can I make a comment?
I think we're on Rosemary Malarkey's time, but
it's okay. I'm done. Thank you.
We continue to say that we're not allowed to comment. We are allowed to answer a question. We are allowed to make a brief comment. We're not allowed to have a discussion or make a decision, but we can respond to a question that somebody asks. A lot of that material is in the housing element of the city's general plan, which is available on the website. I'm sure there also is another way of reaching it, but that's a good way to go.
Thank you, Commissioner Grossman. Do you want to add, Commissioner Kerr?
I just want to thank Bart for mansplaining that for me.
Okay, can I just, I just want to add, because I'm looking at the housing element right now, and just for people's information, what Albany's regional housing needs allocation for very low income, there's 80 units, low income 53 units, moderate income 57, above moderate 145. And supposedly right now, since 2015, we've met 0 of the very low, 6 low income, 179 moderate, and that's counting Albany Village, and 14 above.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. All right, I believe the next person waiting to come in was Brian Beal, so the city clerk, and I think you're in and on. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. It's Brian Beal, former commissioner member and now candidate for school board. And I just wanted to say I heard a lot of good stuff, and what you guys were talking about is always, so Margie is talking about community land trust. I want to lend a lot of support to that idea, except that I'd say it's a long-term idea. Obviously, the drawback is we have to have some land to buy, and we have to have some money to buy it with. The top of Albany Hill would be a nice prospect if the owner were willing to sell it. For practical, accessory dwelling units remain the most practical way to get where we need to go quickly. And as to the where and who, and I think a lot of it is homeowners can do it. But maybe if there were a way for the city to facilitate something maybe like our sidewalk tax. It was so successful in helping homeowners to repair the sidewalks. Maybe the city has the scale that we could maybe help them build accessory dwelling units in some way. So thank you as always for all your work, and in the interest of time, that's what I had to say now. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your comments. I think that the next person being brought in by the city clerk is Corey Dostey. At that point, that'll be the last of the hands up. So unless anybody waves in before then, you'll get to take us home. Corey Dostey, you're on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Commissioners. Good evening. Just thank you for your hard work. And I love also the idea of a land trust. As a millennial who is renting and has been renting, the idea of not renting is a fantasy from my perspective, even though I have now become middle income with a very stable career. That is in the past 2 years. So maybe after more time, and maybe if something happens about student loans. But yeah, no, imagining home ownership is super not anywhere in the realm of any of the millennials that I know, including some of my older friends. Especially, I mean, a lot of us are disabled, but I feel like that's part of the population too, is we're getting better at identifying disability. And with the climate and generational trauma, things are accumulating and it's becoming more and more noticeable, right? And the wealth disparity is just growing more and more. And I do feel like, yeah, there are definitely like seniors that it affects a lot. And then there are youth that it affects a lot. And I'm sure there are also folks across all age ranges. But yeah, I just wanted to say that when thinking about renters, which I appreciate, yes, please do. I also feel like I've looked into rent to own as a model. Everything I've looked into has been like a scam, as far as I could tell, where it would just be you pay in extra and you never actually get to own anything. You're just sort of locked into really long-term contracts. So I don't know. There's maybe like a potential for some kind of education around if that does ever work, how folks get in on that. And I agree with co-ops, and I agree with co-op housing. And I think that a key thing that I think was mentioned previously, but not this meeting, is like zoning codes around single families, right? And making housing available to, like for me, I really like living alone, but in close proximity to other people. I really liked the dorm situation at college. And I've been able to find like a multi-family dwelling unit that's a lot like that. And I really, really like that. So having those sorts of options, I think, is good for city density, for income affordability, and all of that stuff. So I would love to see that be part of your considerations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comment. So that concludes the public comment portion of this item. I don't believe we had a action item from the subcommittee, so we have time for further discussion. And then, when we feel that we've had enough of this discussion, we can move on to the next of the subcommittee. So further discussion from commissioners. Commissioner Marks.
I'm sorry, I can't control myself. I just want to say that what the Land Trust in Oakland is doing is buying properties that are already built. And I think that's what would be the solution in Albany too. Instead of buying the land to build stuff, we would buy buildings already here that are for sale.
Thank you for that clarification. Any further discussion from commissioners? Commissioner Kerr.
I just wanted to bring us back to the actual agenda, and this is excellent discussion. I really appreciate public comment on all the issues that we've been raising, but what we need to do is contribute to the equity plan for the city of Albany. And one of the aspects of the equity plan for the city of Albany is housing, and the other that we're reporting on at this moment is development of the business community. These two things are not disparate. They're part of the same thing. When people work in Albany, they need to be able to afford to live in Albany. And I think that when we move into our final recommendations to the City Council, what we need to be careful to include is the unity of these two ideas. So I hope that people will kind of walk away from this meeting and kind of mull over all the things that we've talked about, but I really hope that we can move forward with the idea that housing and community development are intricately linked, and that racial justice and equity includes housing and community development. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. I think I saw Commissioner Gary. Or no, I apologize. Any other comment from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, we appreciate the update from that subcommittee and look forward to another one on September 1 at our next meeting, a regular meeting. The next subcommittee of the Equity Impact Plan subcommittee that we'll hear from is Schools and Youth. If I remember right, Commissioner Marks and Commissioner Grossman. Is one of you prepared to give an update?
Bart.
You want me to? Okay. We were at a slight disadvantage, or maybe more than a slight disadvantage. We had a very good meeting, very productive meeting with the consultants, but we haven't yet received the summary. And since we were really engaged in the conversation, none of us took a lot of notes. There are a few things, though, that I think we talked about as being pretty central. One is we felt like it was important to have a distinct data collection approach for youth, not as a section of an overall survey, but rather either a youth survey, or we talked a lot about the possibility of focus groups and other models of interactive surveying, because we think we'll learn a lot more that way. We recognize that it's very important to connect with the schools and find out what's going on there and what some of the issues are. And we talked a bit about the unfinished business of the racist website some years ago as being an important sort of communal trauma that's never really been appropriately addressed. We do have a meeting coming up next week with the superintendent. We intend to talk to him about that and also about other options for learning more about the needs of youth. I think we feel strongly that we should not simply focus on the schools when we're talking about youth. We need to see young people as part of the community and therefore part of the concern of the city. And that the city needs to have some concerns about what goes on in the schools and how to be supportive, but also how to really represent the needs of youth. We need to hear what it is that youth want and need, what's important to them about the city, what issues they are encountering in terms of racism and other forms of bigotry. And so that's what we plan to set out to do. Margie, do you want to add to that?
You did great. Thank you.
And Shelley, Dr. Holt, are you there?
I am. I'm actually pulling up the notes as we speak so that I can fill in some blanks. I just gotta find them real quick amidst my staff. So give me 1 second.
Okay.
Do we want to hear, I think I saw Commissioner Kerr. Do we want to hear from Commissioner Kerr and we can return to you, Dr. Holt?
Sure.
Commissioner Kerr.
Yeah, thank you, Margie and Bart. I just have always struggled with the idea of what do we mean when we say youth? Because in my mind, we're talking about people under the age of 25, maybe under the age of 21. I think it would be useful for us as a commission to really identify who we're trying to engage when we talk about engaging the youth. It's not just high school kids. There's a lot of college age, well, or maybe it is. I mean, I don't really know, but there's a lot of young people who are not necessarily engaged in the community dialogue, and I would very much welcome their voices, anyone from 30 and under. And I wonder if we shouldn't just throw a definition out there so that we're clear about what we're talking about.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. Commissioner Geary?
Yes, I would agree with Commissioner Kerr that we need to identify who our target audience is in this situation. I also agree with having a focus group, just letting the voices of our youth be heard. Just what I know, I've seen that the suppression of our youth voice continue to just hold things in. They created an outlet that we should really try to work together and change the narrative of what's being put out about this city. So kudos to the focus group on how you guys can develop that and make that stronger, and we get that out to our target audience. I think it will be a successful program as well. So thank you both for your hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner Geary. Dr. Holt, do you want to jump in now? Or if you need more time, we can come back to you after public comment.
Well, actually, I have them pulled up, and I just shared them with Isabel, who can share them with the group. But Commissioner Grossman did actually a really good job. There were two overarching outcomes that we wanted, which was for all of these, which was to contribute to the development of a racial equity statement and to collect and review and inform recommended actions and develop the anti-racism and social justice survey process. I want to be very clear about, we're talking about the process, not the actual questions, because we want to develop the questions with community input. And so what we came up with was 3 key goals. One was around partnership, city and district working together in a true partnership, and the involvement of more young people in the city policy development and workings. The second was youth empowerment. And we did speak to the fact that youth, we're speaking about people under the age of 25. And where that came in was talking about also the vocational, technical, skilled trades. Those came up in the conversation, as well as the high school student body, and also remembering that we have 2 high schools. Oftentimes we just speak about Albany High, but we also have St. Mary's in the area. So remembering that you have multiple bodies, which leads to the third goal, which was diverse representation. And so here we spoke specifically about the high school student body, representing the community at large and not just the city of Albany, meaning that we have students that come to us from other areas and they do contribute to the inner workings of the city and bring diversity, and understanding why that started, how it started, and being able to move forward. And so I want to make sure that everyone gets all of the notes around this. And for this committee, they are coming back together on, it looks like August 25th, I believe, from 10 to 12. Hope that helps.
If I may offer a suggestion, perhaps if there's meeting notes from the subcommittees, we could include them in the packet for the September 1st meeting. If you can get them to me.
That's fine. I can share them with you now. They're meeting notes from every committee. Every meeting had extensive notes.
Yeah, so that they're part of the public record. We can share them as part of the packet for the September 1st meeting. Yes, that would be great.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Mm-hmm. And thank you, Dr. Holt. Commissioner Geary, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Isabel. That's about the communication, the transparency. I love it. Just want to say that, but that wasn't my comment that I wanted to talk about. One thing I want to see if Commissioner Marks and Commissioner Grossman would want to think about is, possibly inviting you to our commission, or maybe having a youth commission. I don't know. It's just something to think about to get them engaged. Again, we're trying to lift their voices in our community. And what great way to do that is create a platform where we can get 1, 2, 3, however number we would want to get to represent the city on, understanding the youth issues and how we can work together. I think that will show unity, that the city is reaching out, right, to the youth and getting them engaged. So it's just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Geary. At this point, not seeing any more initial questions or comments, we can turn to public comment. Again, this is for the item on the agenda of 6.1-2, the Schools and Youth Subcommittee for the Equity Impact Plan. We have public comment here. I see first hand up, and Jeremiah Penguela, the city clerk, is moving you in. You're on.
Yeah, I second Member Gary. Get that committee going, get the youth involved. You know, I'm kind of halfway youth, right? I'm 36 years old, or I'll be 37 August 30th. You know, it is difficult to save up money to buy a property and to own something, right? Because you come out of a public school and you go directly into student debt, right? So now you got $100,000. Now you got to go get a job to make $100,000 to pay $100,000. So by the time you're 30, you're still at zero. You know, can you guys look into, I don't know if it's a question or not, private high schools, the parents pay money for their kids to go to a private high school. Now, what's the ratio of those kids getting a scholarship to where college is free? So you got rich people that can afford private high school. They get free college because their kid's so smart, or they got a full ride scholarship. Now you got the public school system to where all these kids go to public schools and they got to pay for it. So it's a parent's decision. So do they put the money, you got to pay for private high school, or you're going to pay for college? So I don't know what the ratio is, whether or not public school, you know, ends up getting less full ride scholarships and private high school students are getting more all expenses paid free full ride scholarships to schools. So that's something else to look into. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see another hand, Corey Dosty, and I believe the clerk will move you in. And you're here. Thank you.
Hi again. I just wanted to agree that under 25 is probably a good range. I've turned 31 this year, and I think that passing 30 was certainly a big mark for me. But even before then, I started to feel a little alienated from stuff geared at youth. It was recent enough that I can remember that food was so important. Having meetings with food, actually cooked food. Cooking is very hard. It's not a skill I've been able to build up yet. So anything that's, I mean, sometimes a potluck, but yeah, pizza is all well and good, but the meetings that I would go to over and over again, and that fostered a sense of like, oh, they really cared that we're here, offered cooked food. So that's just my bit of advice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this point, I don't see other public comment. So we can conclude the public comment on this section and move toward commissioner discussion. Again, with this subcommittee, I don't believe we have a action item or a request for direct action. So we can discuss this for the period that we need, and then we'll move to the third of the subcommittees. Are there commissioners who wish to be heard in additional discussion about this subcommittee? Commissioner Geary.
I just wanted to add one more thing to what I've stated, and if we're going to engage with the youth and possibly set up a youth commission, I would want, as you stated, we have youth coming in, attending our schools from different communities. It would be great that we select in a way where we'll get a wide selection of youth, different opinions, what they're dealing with as far as different issues in their community. There again, it's just making sure everyone feels included in our community. that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Gary. Other members of the, by the way, your digital hand remains up, Commissioner Gary, so I don't know if you're certainly glad to call on you again, but any other commissioners who want to be heard in this discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you to the members of the Schools and the Youth Subcommittee. The third of our subcommittees, so this is item 6-1-3, the third of the subcommittees under the Equity Impact Plan are policing. This includes Commissioner Kerr and myself. Do you wish to go first, Commissioner Kerr? Or? Okay, all right, I'll start off and then you will, I am sure, correct me if I make any slips, which I'm sure I will, or important omissions, which I'm sure I will. So the two of us met with both consultants to discuss with a focus on some issues, frameworks for helping to think about policing in relationship to the goals of the Equity Action Plan. On the grounds that begin with a kind of imagining of what we would aspire to achieve within a 10-year time frame in order to speak to the idea of the Equity Action Plan, including both short-term goals, but also, as we've said, long-term ones. And some of the key goals that we discussed in this included moving toward aspiring to achieve a goal of community policing, a system that structures and fosters support, and also that fosters support for victims of crimes, a community partnership that balances the role of police and social services, non-militarized presence within the community that fosters safety for all residents, specifically those who have been historically and negatively impacted by racial oppression and other types, and the existence of community partnerships that include diverse representation of the community. A second spoke to data and aspirational goals over a 10-year period of a system that includes transparent communication process to provide community awareness, support, and accountability through effective and ongoing data collection and analysis, and some discussion of different ways that that could be done. And third, communication, development of an infrastructure that provides for proactive, clear, transparent, and consistent methods of communication, not crisis-driven, and a system that aligns internal, external, and interdepartmental communication to inform best practices and to permit adjustment based on needs around the health and the safety of the community at large. After that, we moved into discussion of some of the challenges that we might imagine being impediments or challenges to overcome to meet these 10-year goals in elements of policy, practice, resource, relationships, power dynamics, and mental models. And those include a number of things which it sounds like will be included on the public report for the September 1 meeting, but that broke down some of our early thoughts, and brainstorming on those issues. We also turned to a discussion of the survey. Something that we understand is a piece of these, and of making sure both some general goals of making sure a discussion of how to ensure the survey speaks to different types of experiences with law enforcement, that it includes questions on the impact of the relationship with police of victims of crime, to make sure that their perspective is also heard, to assess, so these as being issues around experiential questions for different groups of people in Albany, so that we can break out some of those experiential questions by demographic groups to the extent possible, and then other questions about contemporary public opinion on a wide range of issues of policies and procedures, including budget, and to try to imagine a open-ended, some space for open-ended questions that allow people to engage with what their vision is of a police department in the year 2030. We talked about potential concerns. These included things like building in the need for check-ins over time. How will it be done? How will we accomplish this? Will it mean that we would look to have updated surveys at a regular basis so that we could fulfill this, that we could be checking in on our progress in these respects, making sure that we're identifying and sharing the process as we go along, relating this subcommittee to the task force and any other kind of working group that might be developed, and of trying to think about how we can frame these issues in a way that will allow for broad-based community engagement and buy-in, so that the changes that the residents speak toward can be incorporated and not simply be attempted and then pass away. We also have a follow-up meeting scheduled for next week, in hopes of clarifying, after further reflection, some of these questions, moving toward an update that we can provide in September 1, which hopefully continues to give more concrete form to some of these reflections and suggestions, though I don't think that we set an exact aspect of what that concrete form will take for the September 1 meeting. So that's partly what we'll develop in our follow-up meeting. Do you want to add to that, Commissioner Kerr?
Sure. I really would like to underscore two key points as we go forward in the addressing the issues of policing and racial equity in the city of Albany. And those are in two categories. The first category is power dynamics. And the second category is it's called the mental model, but it's how we think about things. And it's probably the most important and the key aspect of what we can do to move forward. But in terms of power dynamics in Albany, the police department in Albany, like the police department in every other jurisdiction in this country, is dealing with much more than they should have to deal with. We have paid and empowered law enforcement officers with the right to use force to sustain our laws, but we haven't supported them with social support systems that have been evaporated over the last 30 years. Police are dealing with much more than they need to, and their role needs to be clarified. In Albany, we have made some pretty significant strides, and we should be proud of that as a commission and as a community. We have a neighborhood services program. We have Albany Cares. We have mental health services contracts with the city of Berkeley. And for those of you who may not know it, our tax dollars go to the city of Berkeley for mental health programming. So when the proposition to support mental health programming passed in 2004, I'm not sure of the date, but anyway, our tax dollars are going to the city of Berkeley mental health program so that we can provide mental health services to our community. We need to continue to develop that progress that we've made, and it's not insubstantial. We have made a lot of progress, and we should be proud of what we've done in Albany. But we need to do more, and we need to clarify the roles of the power structure that relate to police, the council, the committee, the citizens. We need to ask ourselves, if I am an individual who feels aggrieved by the actions of the City of Albany Police Department, who do I tell that story to? And how does that story get reflected in the reality of what we hear? So we need to be sure that we have an authentic process where we are reviewing, perhaps not overseeing, but at least reviewing the actions of the police department. The mental model that goes into this is, what the heck are we afraid of? And I speak to you as a crime victim and a survivor of a homicide, and I need to be sure that you understand that we need to include the voices of people who have been affected by crime in this process going forward. And that's pretty much, I think, Greg, you got the rest of it, but that's pretty much what I'd like to add.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. Questions and preliminary comments, or do I see Isabel?
Yes, I just wanted to provide some new information regarding Berkeley mental health, since it was just brought up by Commissioner Kerr. The city recently was notified by the city of Berkeley that mental health, that the funds that the city of Berkeley receives from mental health services only includes the city of Berkeley, not the population of Berkeley and Albany. And that but the funding that Alameda County receives for providing mental health services does include the population of Albany. So for this reason, as of July 1st, Berkeley Mental Health no longer is providing services to the city of Albany. And all services are provided by Alameda County Behavioral Health. However, the one thing I do want to mention is that since the city of Berkeley will continue to provide the mobile crisis team services for the fiscal year, and evaluate how much it costs to provide that services to the city of Albany, and then negotiate with the county as far as whether or not the county would want to pay Berkeley to continue to provide those services, or have the county provide the services to Albany. So, and then just to give you a little bit of an overview, just a brief overview, when Berkeley informed us of this change, they also said that most Albany residents with Medi-Cal use the Alameda County Behavioral Health Services for outpatient therapy and psychiatry. So the county has always provided mental health services. Berkeley provided a certain level, and it was not, as we all know, it was not, they didn't provide a service to a wide array of residents. They had about 10 people who they were providing services to, and they will continue to do so if those residents want to continue to provide the services, so that there's no disruption in service provision. But those residents now have a choice to either continue with the City of Berkeley services or go with Alameda County.
Thank you for that update, Isabel. And am I right that that will be on our agenda for September 1 as well, as a separate item? Or
well, I don't have further information than what I've just provided you. If the commission wants more information, then it would have to come from the county as far as, the services that they provide, that they've been providing, and we'd have to reach out to the county to receive, a presentation or, an overview of what the services that they provide.
Thank you. Other preliminary questions and comments from commissioners before we go to public comment? I see Commissioner Grossman.
I want to emphasize two things. I think that one of our biggest problems, and so I want to label it that, is the lack of data about what the police in Albany actually do. I took another look today at the blotter that Albany presents, and maybe some of you have looked at it online. It basically says police initiated an action on this street, and nothing was done, and it was logged. And every encounter is that way. So there's no way of telling what happened, who was involved, what the effect was on anybody. There's no information there. We don't know what the police do. It's very difficult to hold a body accountable if you have no information about them. So I think one of our biggest problems is, how do we get some decent data collection about what the police do? And when people come to us and say, I've been stopped 15 times for driving while black, and there's nothing in the police record that shows that happened, it becomes very difficult to take action. So I think that's one of the things we have to really insist on, that there's good data, and that data is specific enough not to identify individuals, but to identify problems in terms of disproportionate interference in people's lives. That's one thing. On this other issue of mental health, I think many of us feel that having police intervene in mental health situations is generally a bad idea. Just the presence of a policeman with a gun and a badge, or a policewoman with a gun and a badge, tends to escalate situations. This is something the police, you can train police in de-escalation, but that's really not why they're police. That's not what they go into the field for, and they tend not to do it very well. And they tend often to resort to physical means. So it's very important that we have reliable mental health services that are not police-based. And I'm very concerned about this news, which I've been hearing little dribs and drabs about no longer receiving services from Berkeley, because while Berkeley has been relatively unattentive to Albany, without being too critical, I simply want to say that I don't expect that we would get very much from the county. Otherwise, the county has lots of problems, and for a small city like Albany to get something from the county is a very difficult problem. So I do want to see us learn more about what's going on with mental health and take some positions on that, because it is definitely a social justice issue. So I just wanted to mention those two things.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Grossman. Other commissioners with preliminary comments or questions? I see Commissioner Kerr.
I just want to thank Assistant City Manager Isabel for the update on the really disturbing change in mental health services within the city of Albany. I'm not sure what generated that. I'm not sure what the budget impacts of that are. I'm not sure that within the city we can really track what that means to us. But having, along with Commissioner Grossman, served on the Albany Berkeley Mental Health Commission for a number of years, I don't know what's going on. And I'm deeply concerned that we may be at the sharp end of a stick with loss of services in the city. I know that we have some established contracts. I know those are probably going to stand solid, but I would like for our September meeting to have as much as possible, a disclosure of the implications of this change July 1 on mental health services within the city. I agree that maybe most of the people who have Medi-Cal in the city of Albany are getting services from Alameda already. But I think this is a pretty much a duck and dive from the city of Berkeley on mental health programming. And I want to be sure that our tax dollars are not still flowing to Berkeley while they're not providing services to us.
They're not. The city of Berkeley was actually quite surprised to find out that the tax dollars, the MHSA contribution for the city of Albany never went to the city of Berkeley. They did thorough research as they were negotiating a contract with Alameda County Behavioral Health and went to the state to find more information. So they're pretty, it's been identified and recognized also by the county that the city of Berkeley does not receive MHSA money for the city of Albany. As far as an update or more information, on the impact of this change, I doubt that we will get one for the September 1st meeting, because we do need to post the agenda for that meeting next week. And it has been very difficult for staff to get some answers from the county. So at this point, until we can get a good connection from the county, we will continue to try. If the commission wishes to help in any way, of course you're welcome to. But at this point, it would be difficult to get anything on the agenda for September 1st.
May I respond? Chair. I appreciate that, Isabella Leduc, and I think at the very least it would be helpful for the community and for the city to understand what the projected revenues to either the city of Berkeley or Alameda County for mental health tax dollars is within the city of Albany. It would seem to me that that could be reported by September 1, but maybe that's a calculation that's beyond the scope of what we need to do. But I'm interested in how much our tax burden is within the city of Albany and when and where. Apparently it's never been in Berkeley. And so how many dollars over the years that we thought it was in Berkeley have transferred to Alameda County? Those are questions that I think we should be able to answer. And I would like to request an agenda item future at a date to be mutually agreed on where we talk about that dollar amount.
And just to give you a little bit of overview of MHSA, it's a tax on the 1% of the top 1% of the population, the greatest, the people who make the most money, and the funding is distributed by a calculation, which I am not aware of the calculation. So any detailed information will need to come from the county again. So we can try to get some, definitely, we've been trying to get some information and we will continue to do so, and happy to bring back some information to the commission when the information becomes available.
Thank you so much, Isabel. Commissioner Grossman?
I just want to support what Commissioner Kerr just said. And I think, Isabel, your comments about the difficulty about getting information from the county is exactly why I'm suggesting that county may not be a very good resource for us. It's also interesting that the city of Berkeley didn't know that it wasn't receiving funds. And it tells you something about the chaos that goes on in the mental health system. So I would like to know, when it's possible, I would like to know what the status is of negotiation, what services will be provided. And then I think we need to take a look at what services do we need and where the gaps might exist. The mobile crisis team is a very important service and a very good alternative to policing. But at the moment, the way we interact with Berkeley is through the police. With Berkeley Mobile Crisis. So I think we need a full discussion of this issue. And we need it soon, because we're not going to be able to make much progress on a lot of things if we don't have stable mental health services.
Thank you, Commissioner Grossman. Any other preliminary thoughts or questions before we go to public comment? All right, thank you all. So we'll now go to public comment, then we'll come back to the commission to complete discussion of the subcommittee on policing for the Equity Action Plan. So I see two members of the public, and I think the Corey Dostie is entering right now, and you're on.
Hi, commissioners. So I'm very upset now, and not about the mental health stuff. I'm upset about the policing subcommittee, and I'm going to try to be very respectful and composed about it. I'm confused as to why Commissioner Kerr is on it, because I believe Commissioner Marks moved and it was seconded and voted on and approved that it would be Member Gary as well as Chair Downs, and I don't remember that updating in any way. And I am really concerned about the focus on victims of crimes who, yes, we need to pay attention to, without any focus on the victims of police brutality, which is the entire purpose of this entire movement. And the focus on people who are hypercriminalized by the police, such as Black people and protesters for Black lives. So we need representation of folks who have been incarcerated, folks who have been arrested, whether unjustly or otherwise, because we know that things are unevenly enforced. People are pulled over for pretext stops on the basis of whether they look like they belong. We know this. Why? Okay. Also, the statement that we don't have data, it's very hard to act. We need data on, I agree. What the hell are the police doing? But the police reporting that data, even with body cameras, right, has not proven to in any way lead to accountability, because there's always a framing and a narrative of a video recording. And we cannot actually trust the police to tell us that they're doing their jobs right. We can't, and saying, oh, well, maybe some review, but not actual oversight. No, the discussion is about, yeah, oversight. That is what other members of the community have been calling for, Susan Moffat especially. The 100+ folks that have written in about defunding the police have also talked about oversight and not review. And we have made that explicitly clear. And to dismiss that, maybe you meant to have it as an option and that you're still deciding between, but it really should heavily be leaning towards oversight. And we cannot lose sight of the fact that the original reason for this discussion was the murder of a Black man by police. And saying, well, we need police to deal with homicides is maybe true. But I don't know that it's a guarantee, because police are committing homicides. You cannot walk away from that as the core of this, okay? Like, I hope that I was eloquent enough and that I was able to convey my deep distress. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One piece of just information, and then we'll take the next public comment. It is confusing that there were two bodies created at the last meeting. One was for representation to the citywide task force, and that is the one that includes Commissioner Geary and myself. And the second was the Subcommittee on the Equity Action Plan, and that did include Commissioner Kerr and myself. So I know it's that there potential for overlap and obviously for confusion, but I just wanted to clarify by that. So I see Jeremiah Panguelo next, and I think the city clerk.
Hi, yeah. So
moving you out.
In all actuality, police are actually the good guys. The police are there to protect you when you're getting robbed. It's just like you got one messed up cop and it ruins it for everybody else. You got one bad apple and it ruins it for everybody, And it's like, we have a lot of really good officers. I mean, look at our police chief. I mean, look at Albany Police. We have great officers, and obviously everybody needs some coaching, right? So sure, police are scary. They dress up in all black. That's intimidating. And they walk around with this big old gun on their side of their hip. When they could, carry it, they could conceal it if they want to, but they gotta show it to everybody. They gotta show off. So I tell all these little kids, that I see, police are the good guys. You don't gotta be afraid of them. And that's what teenagers are getting wrong, because police are gonna be the ones to save your life. And regarding mental health, Bart Grossman, you got to have a police officer in a mental health situation. If someone calls for a 5150, you have to have police on standby for protection. And you could send the ambulance and an EMT, and they don't look very scary because they're gonna, check your temperature and ask you, where your pain hurts. But you do need some policing on mental health to protect everybody, to keep, someone crazy going, to keep everybody safe. And Albany, obviously we're moving toward this thing to where Albany's becoming a bigger city, and we need to have our own food and housing. We need to come up with something called Albany Food and Housing. Because I'll tell you what, Albany is last on Berkeley's list when it comes to helping Albany out. I mean, look at me, for example. I've been trying to take a shower since March, and Albany has been telling me every single month, go to Berkeley, go to Berkeley, go to Willard. We keep outsourcing our own city for everything. We keep paying millions and millions of dollars. You know, we got to step up to the plate and be responsible for ourselves and stop begging and asking this other city for help. Oh, help us. We got too much workload. We can't take care of ourselves. But we can, you know? So these police need to come to our schools and play basketball at recess. They need to walk up Solano Avenue, you know, riding a bicycle, walk Solano, carrying a flower, you know, maybe change the color to blue instead of black. You know, make it friendly, okay? They just need to show up to schools and play hoops or recess, play handball, and teach the kids that these are actually good guys, because there's getting a lot of wrong impression. So just don't let one bad apple ruin it for the whole police force. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I think the city clerk is moving in David Danby. Public comment.
Hi, I'm here.
You're on.
All right, thanks. It's Julie Winkelstein. I've been watching DNC, so I've missed a lot of the meeting. But this is an important topic to me. So first of all, I was motivated to speak just because of Corey Dosty's comments. I so appreciate and support and want to second everything that she had to say, and her outrage, her emotions, I completely understand and support. I absolutely, totally agree that police oversight is critical and that we shouldn't settle for anything less. I also wanted to support what Bart Grossman said about needing more details about what the police activities are. I think that's really critical, that we know actually what they're doing, what's happening, and not just a very sketchy description of, I've also looked at those, of what's happening. And I also do think that we should be very clear about what the police's responsibilities are and what they aren't. And I completely agree that that the police should not be responsible for social services, and we should be providing that, and let the police. I actually don't know what the police should be doing, actually, frankly. It's scary. It's scary right now to me, knowing that there are police officers on the streets with guns. They scare me, and I'm a small, older white woman, so I can't even imagine what it's like to be a person of color, especially a young Black man. So I just wanted to reiterate, and I probably wasn't going to say anything until I heard Corey Dosty speak, and I hope that you took everything that she said, that they said, to heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. So that concludes the public comment on this topic. Further discussion by commissioners. Commissioner Grossman.
Yeah, you mentioned the existence of these two different groups, and I think that's part of the confusion. And it's not clear in the charge of the task force to set up a task force that is where the discussion is going to go on about oversight. I think I sort of let that go because that group exists. But if you look at the charge to the group, it doesn't really say that they're going to talk about oversight. And in fact, the original notion was an advisory committee for the sheriff, for the police chief, excuse me, which nobody thought was really a response to what people are concerned about. So I wonder if the policing group could sort that out so that we either know that there will be a meaningful conversation in a task force that I hope will be very broadly inclusive about a model of police oversight, police community oversight, or if not, that we will take that up here.
So I appreciate that. A couple of pieces that I'll respond to on that. I mean, I think Those are certainly, important considerations. In our early part of our conversation with the consultants on this subcommittee, we focused on the idea of a 10-year plan and vision. And that did include, forms of, we had different language for it that was discussed. And I think that vision, where we'll be in 10 years includes space for that. I think, we have to include that not only because it would be impossible, to reflect on where we should be in 10 years without having reflection and engagement with that question, but also because we're not going to really be able to get the answer to the question you posed for a while, right? That task force continues to meet. Presumably its actions would have to be ratified by council. And so until that happens, we're really not going to know what's going to emerge there. So I appreciate, share this sort of wish for complete clarity, but think we're operating in a space of, where that's going to be hard to pin down for at least a little while the task force, completes its work and then until council acts. But even if council were to act, my vision is that it would be impossible for us to talk about these questions in terms of our perception of what we want and what the city to be at in 2030, which is one of the charges of the Equity Action Plan, and also in terms of our statements about what we would like gathered in the community survey, without thinking that reflections upon the public engagement with the police on this level, whether it's an oversight commission, a review board, some other language. It seems to me it has to be part of the discussion, no matter what comes out of the working group task force. Commissioner Kerr.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was appropriate for me to respond to some of the comments that I heard earlier and to clarify for both the commission and for the public what appears to be a misperception about the perspective of crime victims in this discussion and this movement forward. There is no doubt in my mind, and there is no doubt in the minds of many other crime victims, that the police are not infallible and that they are subject to lots of oversight, lots of review, and lots of improvement. My own personal experience in regard to this is that when my brother was murdered in 2003, I was called by the detective investigating his crime, and I was asked if the perpetrator who I spoke to on the phone sounded Black. Well, to my mind, nobody sounds Black, nobody can be perceived as being Black, and the perception of that was completely anathema to my worldview. So to assume that crime victims don't belong in this discussion, Corey and Julie, is a false assumption. And I would respectfully request that you reconsider where that comes from for you, because the victims of police violence are victims of crime just as much as any crime victim is. And for you to assume that you understand what crime victims have been through, although I don't know your personal histories and I don't know that you've been crime victims yourselves, I would respectfully request that you rethink that and that you reconsider your admonition that you don't understand why I'm part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. Just a couple of pieces, that to reinforce, that all the members of the commission are part of the conversation, and you're part of the conversation on the subcommittee because that was the action of the entire commission last time. So I'm grateful for your work and your perspective. not in the same way that you are, but I was myself a victim of violent crime, in which police officers behaved heroically in front of us to avert further violence. So I understand the importance of that perspective, though I wouldn't equate that with the experience that you had or others have had. And at the same time, I also, come from that experience and many others with, for me, a certainty that oversight is necessary in a Republican system of governance, and that oversight needs to be effective, although and to report to the public. So I think that the ways that people, just to sort of reinforce the point that you're making, that it is possible to, experience these from multiple perspectives and in ways that can lead to a wide range of thoughts about the way forward. Any other commissioner questions or comments? Commissioner Gary.
Thank you, Chair Downs. I just wanted to reassure Corey and Julie that, again, we are all working together. I'm here. Commissioner Kerr and I have had conversations. She's gotten my perspective, and Chair Downs as well. So I don't want you to feel that I'm excluded out of any conversation. But we're here, we're working, we're trying to bring this community together. My experiences with police and, the interaction with racism and things like that is totally different from anyone on this panel. Without saying too much, I just experienced it last night in this community, and it was very heartbreaking because we are trying to move this city forward, and we continue. As we take one step, we're taking one back because no one is understanding that this is a problem that has to stop. And so with that said, I want to let you know I'm here, I'm listening as I continue this journey with this commission, as we continue to fight against what has been in place for so many years. We are working hard, and we have a great staff, and we hear you, and just don't give up on us because we are trying to move in a positive direction. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gary. And I also want to reinforce that the subcommittees, all of them, work to bring items, work with the consultants to bring items forward back to the commission, and that, that then the commission will work to bring an action plan, back to the council, and so that there's not any, that we're all part of the process. The public will be part of the process. The council, is eventually the deciding body. And that, part of our goal is developing instruments to make sure the public is included, not just in meetings like this, but through an effective and broad-based survey instrument. I think I saw Dr. Holt, yes.
And I just want to, first of all, thank everyone for allowing us to be part of this. Obviously, it's a little bit later where I am on this coast, so that's why I chose not to show my video the entire time I was rocking children to sleep. But what I will say is this: there's a lot of emotion around this, and I bring this up every time because it's going to continue to happen. We do this all over the country. It is serious emotion that is going to come into play. And I also want to point out that these conversations that we're having with the council, with the committee members, are very raw, very real. There's real issues that we're starting to unpack. And it's important for everyone to realize that Albany is not on the same page with this just yet. We're moving forward, we're coming together, but there are very divergent schools of thought around this work and how it needs to move forward. And so part of our role is bringing everything towards the middle. And so just for those of you who are passionate on either side of this, whether it's the defund the police or, it's fine as it is, please know that we're working towards that, and it's a very slow process. And so, not to take anything away from what incited all of this with the public murder of George Floyd, please also understand that things are very difficult for people of color. And as we move forward, we also want to make sure that people of color are still safe in the communities as we are doing this work. Because as you know, or for those of you who are following, there are incidences across the country that are on the rise. And we have to be very cognizant that police officers are people of color are people, everybody's running high on emotions. And we want to make sure that as we move this work forward, we still create safety and create more safety nets that we can for the community and for the people in it. So just know that this work is very convoluted, it's very complex, but it is happening and it is moving forward very well. So thank you to each of you. I didn't say too much in most of the meetings, but I was there, as you all know. And there's just a lot of raw emotion around everything, getting victims and perpetrators, getting police officers and the public involved is going to have to be part of this process. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holt. Further comment from commissioners? All right, not seeing any, then we will return with an update on this topic as for the other subcommittees. That we conclude then the 3 subcommittees for the Equity Impact Plan, which is item 6.1, and that we will expect that we'll all have further updates for our regular meeting on September 1st. Item 6.2 is the Responses to Public Questions Subcommittee. So I think we have an update here. Am I right?
Yeah. Is Margie here?
She is.
Margie, you want me to take the lead on this, or do you want to? Okay, well, I will. And we'll
yes, thank you, Bart.
Yeah, okay, great. As you will recall, there were a variety of questions that were submitted to the various listening sessions, questions that people posed at some of our meetings and at board meetings that never got directly answered. And Margie and I sat down with all of those questions. We grouped them according to who we thought was the best person to answer them. And that document is attached to the minutes. We've been working with Sid on getting those questions answered. And I've asked Sid to give us a little bit of a status report on where we are in terms of getting this material collected, and it will it will be posted on a special web page as part of the city website. Sid, you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. So yes, I did gather those questions from public meetings, community dialogue, additionally all the emails that were sent to the SEJC as well. I've passed them out to the appropriate staff members. They're working on it, making progress, and I will absolutely 100% keep you posted as I get those back in.
Okay, so my understanding is that because Jeremy is away, there's a little bit of a break in terms of getting the web page set up, but it should be up in early September. Right?
Before, yes.
Okay, and at that time, we'll post whatever answers we have. And you can see, if you look at this document, who we've asked. And we will follow up with them and make sure that they respond. And in the meantime, I think we're open to continuing to do this because I think both feel strongly that a question needs to be answered. We can't invite people to give input and ask questions and then not respond.
Thank you, Commissioner Grossman. Commissioner Marks, did you want to add? No, you did a perfect job, Bart. The questions and comments, preliminary questions and preliminary comments from other commissioners before we go to public comment. Commissioner Geary.
I just want to thank Commissioner Grossman and Commissioner Marsh in moving this forward. It's so important, again, that we're communicating with the community. The lines of communication has to stay open during this time. So the fact that we're making strides, again, it just shows that to the residents that we are working together to move everything forward, and we are not dropping the ball on this topic or the situation in order to get the results that they are looking for in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to join in the thanks to Sid and other members of the staff for their work in making it come to fruition. Any other preliminary comments or questions from commissioners before we go to public comment? All right, so public comment on item 6.2, the responses to public questions subcommittee. I think I see one comment. If the city clerk will bring in that commenter. If there's no one else that raises during this comment, we'll move back to commissioners. You're up, Jeremiah Pinguelo. You're still muted right now. You're on.
Oh, thank you. So please tell me what agenda item this is. This doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. You said it's a
6.2, which is the item on the subcommittee on public question, on response to public questions. The subcommittee that's collecting.
Oh, right. Right. So basically, you know, I have my public questions a lot, and I feel I'm unanswered a lot of the times. You know, I don't know what you guys could do for outreach. You know, I do have a lot of public comments, and that's what they are. They're comments, right? So you can only respond back if I have a question. But you answer people's questions when they're asked. So far as the online comments, you know, maybe you could, people submit the comments online, and maybe you could answer them online so people can go on the internet and see the answers to people's questions. So that way that could be transparent. Because it seems like me and a couple other people end up being the only public comment half the time. And you're right, there could be a way for the millennials and more people to get involved, to have a voice and have an opinion. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously a lot of paperwork to review all these emails. And I think you guys are doing a wonderful job at this. It's obviously a work in progress. And keep up the good work. And so there's so many things the city's working on right now. And, you know, there's so many branches going so many directions. So I think that a kiosk like on Solano would be nice, like you guys have suggested. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Not seeing other public hands up. We're back to the commission. Further discussion? All right, I don't think we have an action item here, so unless someone's making a motion, if there's no further discussion, we can move along and look forward to further updates on this process. We appreciate all the work of both the commissioners going through the questions and staff working with them, and in developing modes for getting their answers available in public format. So we think so I appreciate that a great deal. That concludes then item 6-2. 6-3 is from the Inclusivity Subcommittee, which includes a resolution. This is a subcommittee that's composed of myself and Commissioner Gary. Commissioner Gary, do you want to present this, or how do you want to?
No, you can go ahead and present it. That's fine.
So we are, all of us are well aware, I think, of the history of this, which I'll try and review quickly. I know the resolution has gotten quite long. Is that history has accumulated. It began with the resolution that Commissioner Kerr and I devised on a prior incarnation of the Diversity Inclusivity Subcommittee that had asked Council in December 2019, approved by SEJC, to report back the EEO data the city already compiles, but also to collect demographic information about applications for boards and commissions so that the city can in the future develop its information about the self-reported demographic makeup of the city's commissions or commission applicants, in keeping with what many institutions do to monitor their own progress at meeting equity goals and to making sure that they're reaching out to as broad a range of people as possible. In February, Council directed staff to implement the EEO reporting, but Council did not pass the second recommendation on the commissions. Then on June 15th, Council directed SEJC to prepare the plan that we were talking about today to address systemic racism. And then SEJC passed a resolution asking Council to reconsider a survey for commissioners in July 2020 coming from this commission. City Council in its July 2020 meeting heard from staff, heard from legal department, discussed among itself, and after hearing a range of opinions, directed SEJC to prepare a survey that went beyond EEO categories in order to better represent the ways that residents of Albany define themselves while being cognizant of the legal advice provided to the city. That legal advice included questions about whether or not the demographic categories needed to echo EEO for commissions. So there was sort of both that voiced at the meeting, but also an interest in the council in us developing categories that we felt like did represent something closer to the wishes of people of Albany, which the EEO categories do not, particularly on issues of gender. And gender identification. Commissioner Gary and I discerned that a number of cities and towns in the area do ask for voluntary disclosures that go beyond EEO categories, especially on issues of gender, including the city of Richmond. These are included here, and the city of San Francisco and the city of Berkeley on different types of applications for similar boards and commissions. That therefore Albany would be acting in line with other area bodies in including such a more open-ended mechanism for self-reporting. And so therefore continuing to believe that the SEJC and the residents of Albany need information about the makeup of the city's commissions and its applicants for commissions, and about the city's efforts to attract a diverse pool of applicants. Then we asked council, we brought to you a resolution to ask council to direct staff to create a voluntary self-disclosure of gender and racial characteristics that might be either included at the bottom of the application form, which is the method used by Berkeley, Richmond, and San Francisco, or managed through a link to an offsite Google form where applicants can fill in their application without it being attached to any specific, can fill in their information without it being attached to any specific application and only legible as a data point, which is in fact the default Google form setting. So two ways of trying to outline ways of reaching this outcome relatively simply. And on the categories of race, we include the list of the racial categories with which some mild alteration does mirror the categories from the EEO, though it includes as well that people can mark multiple categories, including prefer not to say or prefer to self-disclose with a blank for people to enter their own language. And on the text to introduce gender, after listening to comments in prior meetings and communicating with people who have reached out to SEJC, the subcommittee recommends the categories listed in the resolution, and again with the option to click as many choices below as are applicable. Female, male, non-binary, trans, prefer not to say, prefer to self-disclose with a blank for people to use to enter their own language. And that we would ask then as a follow-up after implementing the system to ask council to direct staff to present this information back to the results of this informational gathering to SEJC and to the council in early 2021 after the applications for the next round of commissions and boards comes in order to lead into discussions for improved recruitment of people to assess how the city is doing at reaching out to a wide wide range of people and to develop recommendations for future efforts to make sure that we are reaching out to as wide a range of Albany residents as possible. So the resolution has gotten lengthy in order in part to capture that history, but also to include, because of questions that have emerged in other discussions, to also include mechanisms that we believe would in fact be simple, voluntary, preserve confidentiality, and allow for the for this to be accomplished without creating an undue burden on staff or putting the city in a situation where it's acting wildly different than other surrounding cities. Commissioner Gary, before I take general comments, is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, I thank you for sharing that information with the public and the commission, but I think we've captured everything we were supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Preliminary questions. Again, the resolution is included as a hyperlink in the agenda packet. We appreciate staff including that. It is, I tried to talk through some of the highlights, but the full resolution is included there. We are glad to have questions or preliminary comments before we go to public comment. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Grossman.
Yeah, this is mostly a matter of information. I was just thinking about, I imagine you've looked at sort of what the norms are and what people feel comfortable with and have wanted. But I'm not, the one thing that I'm not so sure about, and I wonder if you've explored it, is that trans is not really a gender. A trans person may be male or female or non-binary. If you include trans as a gender, does that imply that a trans person is not a male or not a female, but something different? So I just would like to know how people feel about that and whether that's something that, that people are comfortable with, or whether that represents a kind of an othering, to use a word that was used earlier.
It's a very good question, Commissioner Grossman. To me, after consulting with various people and looking at the way some others do, the crucial variable in terms of understanding how to respond to your question turns upon the ability to select multiple categories. So asking people, I think, we did hear from people and looking at other places of a weariness of asking people to make one selection, including trans in that context, can indeed have the outcome that you raised, as well as other potentially harmful outcomes. On the other hand, with the ability to select multiple categories, it may well be that people wish to have this part of their identity reflected in a way that is may well be meaningful in their own self-reporting, and also potentially meaningful in the city trying to understand its ability to reach out to people with a range of identities. So I wouldn't say that it's a perfect solution. There are range of outcomes out there. But what turned for us was that consideration of what it is, how that functions in a capacity for multiple forms of identification. And in that context, what also might be lost if it were stricken from a list that includes multiple forms of identification. But it is something that that there is obviously potential for reasonable disagreement about. The prefer to self-disclose was also crucial in us making the categories that we want to have a wide enough range that people can, disclose through them in many circumstances, but also to recognize that the categories will not, either A, be moving quickly enough as ways of self, determination and description, evolve, or broad enough, to include every possible form, so that is an open-ended category that people can utilize. So those were the two pieces that weighed into our discernment as we tried to think about what our recommendation was. Other comments, questions from commissioners before we go to public comment? Commissioner Kerr.
I just want to thank everyone for their comments and agree that we need to be a little more open-minded in how we're we're describing our data gathering. But I also want to reflect on the fact that one of the hugest encumbrances in the city of Albany right now is that we don't have an agreed upon equity statement. And one of the challenges of the city is to come up with something that can be incorporated and measured and monitored and part of our future in terms of how we are doing with equity in the city of Albany. So we can argue back and forth about specifics of gender description and how many categories we need to include, but until we have an overarching agreement within the city that we want to do this, that we want to have this as part of our goal for our staff, for our council, for our commissions, for our community, until we have that, we don't have much. And I would encourage that we really focus on the bigger issue of putting equity in front of everybody and having an agreed equity statement, and then address the issue of how we're going to measure and how we're going to quantify and define what those equity measures are.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. And in that light, and in context of your work last year and helping to author and move the movement for the resolution successful for equity staff reports, that's something else that we can build into our ongoing updates to see what the outcomes of those are. Commissioner Marks. You're still muted, Margie. So you're still muted right now.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I think one of the roles of commissions in the city is to take leadership positions. And I think, I want this for my city, and I want my city to want this. And I think we could put this out there. So I think to say that, we should have an equity statement first, I think we could do both at the same time. That we don't have to wait till we have the equity statement to figure out these categories if people will fill them out to apply for commissions. We could have both of them. And so I don't want to wait. And I think that the role of the commission is to lead. And this is the way that we want to lead the city in this area. That's my take.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. Other preliminary questions or comments before we move to public comment? All right, so seeing none, I see a couple of hands for public comment. I think Corey Dostey was first, so I think the city clerk will move Corey Dostey in. And then I see a couple of other hands following after. Corey, you're on.
Hi, commissioners. Thank you all for your work and your patience and for this dialogue in general. And for allowing me to continue to share space with you. Thank you, especially around this. I am really thrilled by the work that's been put into it. I'm very happy with the gender question. As your resident, non-binary, loud person, there are a couple of different ways to structure the trans stuff, but yeah, a huge issue is we don't have data on trans folks. It doesn't get asked on LGBTQ folks. Like it was proposed for the census that was planned, and then the current administration doesn't want to measure it because then there's proof of ongoing discrimination, essentially. Yeah. So including it as something that's measured, well, yeah, you can look at different ways to do so is important. And God, I had something more cohesive to say, sorry. I really appreciate this. And I think it is important with looking at who has a voice and who's being heard and who's being represented. And yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think the city clerk will move in the next person, who I believe is David Danby, or is it? Or perhaps it'll be, we'll see who appears as David Danby. And you're, now you're unmuted.
I yield to Julie Winklestein.
We're glad to have either of you or both.
I know. You never know who you're going to get. I wanted to just comment on the gender question, because I don't understand why there can't just be the word gender and an empty line, instead of having all of these choices and then having somebody have to choose one of those choices, or say they decline or they self-describe or whatever. Anytime that we set it up so that it looks like there's some sort of normal or somewhat normal, where there's a list and you fit into that neat category and then you have to write yourself in, I think is a part of othering. And I think for race and for gender, I see no reason not to just write the word race and a line, gender and a line, and just leave it at that. And then people can write in. I know there's probably some sort of survey, quantitative, all that stuff, but as long as you're going to have an empty line in there so that people can self-describe, then why not just go with that right from the beginning? Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think the final hand up is Jeremiah Pinguelo. I think city clerk is moving you in, and now you're unmuted.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so it's kind of weird. You know, I'm Portuguese, half Portuguese, and I don't see Portuguese on there. You know, I don't see Irish on there. Oh, it says white. You know, this is so sad. Look at all the white, black, or African American. So you could, there's different black or African American. So is black a race? You're either one or the other. So you could either be black or you're either African American. So there's black people that aren't African American, you're saying? I don't know. What about just being human? How about that? Everybody talks about working toward a human race. You know, H power. I remember seeing TV commercials called the H element, called the human element. And on those commercials, everybody had different color skin. Who cares what different color skin you have? We're all people. You know, everybody gets hungry. Everybody's stomach hurts when they're hungry. Everybody's thirsty, you know, when you're thirsty. And everybody wants a safe place to sleep at night. You know, we're all human. You keep wanting to find ways to keep us separated. The following text to introduce race. You guys want to introduce racism. You guys are trying to introduce. Why don't you just take these all out? Who cares? Who cares if you're white, black? I don't see yellow or red. What's up with these colors? A color is not a race. White is not a race. Let's just say Caucasian. Isn't Caucasian the politically correct term for white?
No.
I don't know. So where's Caucasian? You got white, but as long as you keep these categories, you're keeping racism alive, because you got these people are white, these people are black, and these people are different and these people are different, and we're different than you and you're different than us, and forever we're all going to be different, but we're not. We're the same. We're human. You know, and all these terms, female, non-binary, trans, all that stuff, they have people that are born with a tail. I mean, you got humans that don't even fall under any of these categories. So yeah, go ahead, keep on categorizing everybody. You know, and gotta keep everybody, this racism alive. It's so sad. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So that concludes public comment on this question. In terms of questions that were raised about why to utilize forms of measurement, I think, going back to, when we assessed this in late 2019, when Commissioner Kerr and I, worked together to develop this and bring this to the commission, and through its, iterations under our new iteration of the subcommittee and previous consideration by the commission, that while we recognize the inherent challenges and potential dangers of asking for this kind of information, that we also recognize and act upon the dangers of not being able to ascertain how the city is doing at reaching populations that historically have been underrepresented on the city's boards and commissions, and that there's a cost to that as well, as there is a cost to doing it in a way that does not provide data that is going to be, that can be turned toward those answers. So it's I would say, I think from the start, we've assessed this as a balancing act, but rooted in a sense that we have struggled as a city to reach out to different populations in recruiting for our boards and commissions, and that if we didn't begin to assess how we're doing at improving that, we would not, in fact, improve at it. So I think that has motivated from the beginning as we've sort of reached toward the best mechanism to try and achieve that goal. Further discussion. Commissioner Grossman.
I think it's important to say that while biologically there are no races, socially there are. There's a construction of race that was created to exclude various people from being represented in various aspects of society. And if we are ever to move toward the direction of doing away with that, we must first make sure that people are included, that there is equity. That's what we're about. And the only way to do that is to be able to recognize when groups are not included. And that's why it's important that we do this now.
Thank you, Commissioner Grossman. Other comments? Okay, seeing none, do we have any motions on this? Commissioner Marks.
Well, is it the desire of the subcommittee that to move to a motion that this would be sent to the city council? Is that what you guys were looking for?
That's what the resolution is written to say.
Well, I move the resolution as written.
Is there a second? Commissioner Grossman. So we have resolution on the floor and seconded. Is there further discussion?
I'd like to request a read of the resolution.
Sure. So I have it as up. So resolution from Diversity and Inclusivity Subcommittee, whereas in December 2019, SEJC passed a resolution for the council, asking council to ask staff to prepare an annual diversity report on the city website that provides an easily accessible way for interested parties to examine the EEO data that the city has already compiled, and to update the diversity report each time the city responds to federally mandated EEO reporting on its workforce composition. And whereas SEJC in the same December 2019 meeting included in the resolution a proposal to urge the City Council to ask staff to add questions about demographic categories to the city's application for boards and commissions, so that staff may in the future add and update information about the self-reported demographic makeup of the city's boards and commissions. And whereas many cities, universities, other governmental entities, nonprofit organizations, and for-profit companies now utilize annual diversity reports to inform citizens, residents, and clients of the demographic makeup of workforces and clients and board members. And whereas these diversity reports empower those citizens, residents, and clients to assess, to assess the institution's progress in making sure its workforce and client base is representative of the people it serves, and can spur deeper engagement with expanding hiring and service practices where there does not seem to be representativeness, and also encouragement for areas where practices are representative of the broader community. And whereas Council on February 18, 2020, directed, there we go, I just lost a little bit with the change, directed staff to implement the first recommendation. I think we maybe have scrolled just a second too fast. If we can, there we go. To direct the first recommendation, the city website now includes a report on the data compiled for EEO. Staff plan to update that data each time the city submits an update to the EEO. And whereas council on that date did not pass the second recommendation to ask staff to develop a system for asking for voluntary demographic reporting from applicants for the city's boards of commissions. And whereas on June 15th, 2020, council directed the SEJC to prepare a plan to address systemic racism targeted against Black people and other people of color in the city of Albany. And whereas SEJC passed a resolution to ask council to reconsider a survey for commissions in July 2020. And whereas city council, these are all from prior resolutions that have been passed by the commission, now the newer part, and whereas city council at its July 2020 meeting directed the SEJC to prepare a survey that went beyond EEO categories in order to better represent the ways that residents of Albany define themselves while being cognizant of legal advice provided to the city. There's a missing word here, or some extra words that have trailed, but could end with just provided to the city. And whereas a number of area cities and towns ask questions that go beyond EEO categories, including, for example, the city of Berkeley's application for boards and commissions, questions on gender, the city of Richmond's voluntary self-description questions on the application for the city created Richmond Fund for Children and Youth Oversight Board, and the city of San Francisco's application for boards, commissions, committees, and task forces that are included on the form and do not conform to EEO categories. And whereas to carry out that work, the SEJC and the residents of Albany need information about the makeup not only of the city's employees, but also of the city's commissions. Additionally, to select the most representative and diverse membership possible, council members need information about the success of the city's efforts to attract a diverse pool of applicants. If the information reveals the city is not attracting a diverse pool of applicants, this information may lead SEJC or council to take action upon those findings and plan more effective outreach to ensure that the city meets its goal to represent the entire community. And SEJC therefore asks council to direct staff to create a voluntary self-disclosure of gender and racial characteristics that is either one, included at the bottom of the application form as done by Berkeley, Richmond, and San Francisco, or two, is managed through a link to an offsite Google form where applicants can fill in their information without it being attached to a specific application, but only legible as a data point, which is the default Google Form setting. And ask staff to include the following text to introduce race. Please indicate how you identify in terms of race, ethnicity. Click as many choices below as are applicable. Black or African American, white, Latinx, Chicanx, Hispanic, American Indian or Alaskan Native, Asian or Pacific Islander, multiracial, prefer not to say, prefer to self-disclose with the blank for people to enter their own language. And ask staff to include the following text to introduce gender. Please indicate how you identify in terms of gender. Please click as many choices below as are applicable. Female, male, non-binary, trans, prefer not to say, prefer to self-disclose with a blank for people to use to enter own language. And SEJC asks council to direct staff to present this information to SEJC and the council in early 2021 to focus discussions for improved recruitment of people from any underrepresented categories. So right now in the view, I don't see everybody. Here we are back. Commissioner Kirk.
Thank you, Greg, for that good read and for the work that's gone into this. I'd like to move the question.
Okay, Commissioner Grossman.
I just want to make one quick suggestion before we move the question, if I may. Would that be all right?
I'm trying to remember the order of operations on a movement of the question. Do you know, Commissioner Kerr, since it's your motion that right now move the question of whether discussion or suggestion or amendment is available at that point, or we have to act on moving the question first? Do you know,
In answer your question, I don't know, but I'm happy to hear what Art Grossman has to say.
but you've got the motion and you're willing to, then I think even if I'm messing up the order of operations, we'll hear from Commissioner Grossman. I also see Commissioner Marks.
I just wanted to make one suggestion. In terms of the race ethnicity question, a number of these represent different terms that speak to the same group, and that's why "or" is there. That's not the case with American Indians and Alaskan Natives. Those are two different groups. And I know that Native Americans are sensitive to that and don't like to be grouped that way. So I think it'd be better to separate them. Also, Asian and Pacific Islanders are not the same group. So I would suggest we get rid of those two "ors" and make them distinct.
Is that a amendment, Commissioner Grossman?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you accept that as a friendly amendment, Commissioner Kerr? That we could,
Commissioner Marks make the motion, I think.
Okay. Oh,
Yes.
Commissioner Marks. Sorry, I apologize. You're right. Sorry, Commissioner Marks. You're muted, Margie, if I can. Still muted. Yes,
I do. Yes.
Commissioner Gary, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, and I know when we had conversation putting this together, my thoughts was that we were getting too wordy with the race and the gender. Just the same as Black or African American, there's some people that identify as Black and they don't want to be in that same category. We may just have to, and this is just a suggestion, I would want to hear your thoughts, just leave an open space for people to self-identify. You have African Americans that are a mixed race, have Caucasian, that's not listed. Some may be a mixed race. So I really think that if we continue to follow the norm, that there's going to be, oh, well, I'm not listed on here. And I know you have preferred to say or to write out in the line, but I think if we start putting in different structures in place that we're not going to get the correct information we need. I know we talked about this and I was, saying it's too long. We're just putting things out there. And I think people, whatever they want to identify, they should have the option to just write out, I identify as, and leave it alone. And that's just my thoughts on it.
Just to be clear, they do have that option. Prefer to self-describe as one of the options, as well as the option to click multiple categories.
Right, and like I said, I understand that, but again, like Commissioner Grossman said, that some Asian do not want to be identified as specific knowledge. I just think it's going to get a little bit convoluted. But again, those are just my thoughts, and it's up to the commission to decide.
We have a amendment to split to the motion to move the question. We have the motion to on the resolution. We have an amendment to split Asian Indian and Alaskan Native into separate categories, and a motion and Asian and Pacific Islander into separate categories. Is that your amendment, Commissioner Grossman?
Yes, but if Commissioner Gary feels that it would be better to also split Black and African American, I don't see a problem with having a list. People can look at a list to decide where they fit. But I do see a problem with asking people to accept an identity that they don't feel.
Commissioner Marks, I saw your okay. All right. So right now we have a motion. We have an amendment. Is that amendment being seconded, Commissioner Marks? Or no, I'm calling you for something else, but you're still muted, Margie.
If I accept it as a friendly amendment, then it's accepted.
Okay.
If the maker of and then the seconder has to accept it also.
Okay. I think I may be right that Bart was both the seconder and the person who submitted the amendment. So should we have a vote on the amendment that Commissioner Grossman suggested?
You don't need to. If it's a friendly amendment.
So as amended, with those changes, should we take the vote? Are we ready to take the vote on the resolution? Commissioner Kerr.
I just want to, I mean, I support this, but I want to add that we could slice and dice this all night long, and then we could come back tomorrow and do it again. And the fact that you have the opportunity to write in your own self-disclosed identity meets the needs of all of the issues that have been raised so far. And I don't think it's in our best interests, absent an equity statement, to spend a lot of time further cutting this up. So I support the amendment and I support the motion, but I really don't want us to spend any more time slicing and dicing this.
Great. Thank you. So are we ready to take a vote on the resolution as amended to split those two lines?
Are we going to, I'm sorry, are
Yes.
we going to also split Black and African American?
Was that I don't know that was an amendment. Is that an amendment to split Black and African American?
If Commissioner Gary feels that's important, I think we should split it.
Commissioner Gary?
No, I mean, it says Black or African American, so I think it's fine. Let's just go ahead and vote. I think we'll be okay with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're ready to vote. All right. Commissioner Kerr.
Yes.
Commissioner Gary.
Yes.
Commissioner Grossman.
Yes.
Commissioner Marks.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So appreciate your work on this and the continuing work on this, and hope we can get it to council in time to act in a way that would be ready for the next cycle, which, as we all know, will be coming up quickly as our terms, in the terms of all the boards and commission members, rotate off. So appreciate you all's continuing work on this. Item 6.4 is update on community building and education from Commissioner Marks. Are you ready to present that, Commissioner Marks?
Yes, I am. I heard a news commentator say that he felt that what was going on in the United States is a moral awakening. And one of the things I've been thinking about is how long are we going to stay awake? And I think we need to take advantage while this is going on to do something in our community, to have a community event, to build community around this issue. And the way you build community is by talking to people, talking and meeting other members of your community. Susan Moffett suggested doing some outdoor event, maybe at the Bulb. I think maybe Memorial Park could be better. I've seen outdoor events done where they take duct tape and mark off 6-foot spots so that everyone is spaced apart. And like I said, I think, and what I think we could cover there would be, we could just look at the areas that we're looking for the equity plan. What do Albany citizens think about affordable housing? What do they want to see in 2030 for economic development, for schools and our youth, for policing? Just take those categories that we already have and what is their vision for 2030? I think there's so many times when community members feel so constrained because of the Brown Act, or, I feel constrained sometimes because of the Brown Act. So, and it's very frustrating for them. So if there was just some forum where people could, like I said, we could build community in Albany and have this outdoor forum and do it safely. I would like at some point to see a motion to go to recommend that the city council schedule an outdoor event in, say, the next 4 or 5 weeks. Because, we need, first of all, it needs to be safe. They need to be restrooms. Audio equipment is going to be essential. The right kind of audio equipment so people aren't frustrated. That kind of thing. I mean, this is, maybe you think it's crazy, but I'd like to community members have expressed interest. There's other things we could do. I'm a big person on educating people about reparations and what that means. Other cities have actually said that they're going to make reparations to their citizens, and there's a million ways to do it. Okay, those are just some of my ideas. If you just let me know what you think. It won't hurt my feelings if you don't like it, but go with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Marks. Preliminary comments and questions before we take public comment. Commissioner Grossman.
Well, one possibility would be to build something like that into the development of the plan. That is, we might have a draft of the plan, and then we might have a community session where we share that and ask for reactions and input from people. I do think we need to have a clear focus when we bring people together, or it becomes kind of chaotic. So that's just one possibility. It would support our work if we did it that way.
Other preliminary comments or questions before we go to public comment?
Or I'm sorry, excuse me. Or another approach to that is if we do a survey. One thing that's often very interesting is you take the results and present them to the community, and often there are interesting things that come up and things that we learn from a survey that we could share and people could react to.
Thank you. Commissioner Marks.
Well, the only thing I would say about us doing a preliminary report is all of my professional life, whenever I've seen that happen, I'm always very suspicious because I feel like, oh, that's going to end up being the report. It doesn't matter what I say. And it usually does end up that way. So I don't want to go with a preliminary report. Mm-hmm. I'd rather get the input and then do a preliminary report and then get more input.
Other questions or preliminary comments? Commissioner Kerr.
I like Margie's idea, and it occurs to me that it's going to be a while before we have dinner with Albany, so maybe it's time to have equity with Albany, and we could do that in Memorial Park without too much difficulty. I think it could be a socially distanced event, and it would certainly lend the opportunity for people who are not connected through the internet, who are not connected to the usual mechanisms of conversation and power structure, to participate if we broadly advertise it. I think Bart's comments about including a preliminary report, I tend to agree with Margie on that. I think we need to assume that people still need to talk about this before we finalize it. So I think it would be useful to have a survey that we are going to offer online, but also have a survey that we could maybe generate some response at a public meeting such as that. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Other questions or preliminary comments before we take public comment? Commissioner Gary.
Yes, I want to thank Margie for the idea. I think it will be very nice to have something like that to get the community engaged. Definitely those that are, don't have understanding of what's going on, or just, understanding the concept of why we're here, putting in the work. So again, if we plan well, educate the public, and make sure we effectively market it well, it could be a nice event. But, again, taking in consideration, of course, we're still in this pandemic. So safety is first. We want to make sure the community is safe. But again, taking measures on how we can educate the public, I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Gary. Any other preliminary comments or questions? Okay, so we'll move now to public comment on this item, which again is 6.4, and I see one public comment. The clerk is moving in Jeremiah Penguelo, and you're on.
Hi, I just want to say, thank you, Margie, for this topic. And I keep forgetting to thank you for all the food and all the baking you did at the showers. And that has been what's missing. You're such a community mother and organizer. And I could tell this is from your heart. And this is such a personality to want to do this. And this is so wonderful. I think we could have a block leader or like a block captain on every block. It could maybe be the CERT captain. In case of earthquake, there's always one person on that block, we can go to, right? So at that house on every block, why not, people could take or turn in their survey there. Every block can have a positive suggestion box. Every block in Albany. or you could have Public Works or something come around and collect every block or every box, with its own survey. Or get that positive suggestion kiosk on Solano, or actually utilize our city hall. Put something at our city hall, a positive suggestion or a kiosk box. That way people can just park at the city hall and on the front door, right there on the patio, they could drop in their vote. They could fill out a survey, and then the next person could park and they can get out and drop their thing. And everybody knows where the city hall is. Very accessible. It's right there on San Pablo. And I think this event to keep everybody to community outreach is great and wonderful. I would suggest the Giltrack Farm. It's open, and it's an open space, and it's very, very neutral. And if you've never been to the Giltrack Farm, I suggest you go. It's so peaceful. Once you're in there, you can't even hear the traffic noise on San Pablo. It's like all the city disappears, and you're on you just time warp to some Native American land. It's beautiful. It's so quiet. So yeah, those are my positive suggestions. Suggestion box, use the city hall, have a block captain or a block leader, someone to show some leadership on every single block in Albany. That way the residents, they have a neighbor that they feel they could talk to, someone that's personable, someone that's, people that could talk to. Like my grandpa Floyd Garrett, All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you. I see one more hand in public comment. So David Danby or perhaps Julie, you are unmuted. You're on.
Hi, you're actually going to get both of us. I just want to say that I really support Margie's idea. I think it's a great idea. And I love the idea of also letting the public, using it as a way of letting the public know what's going on. Could have bookmarks or small flyers or something with information about upcoming meetings, examples of what's happening, and copies of the survey and any other information when you get out, and how they could get ways that they could get further information. And now I'm turning it over to David.
I just want to say I support it wholeheartedly. I think it's a great idea. And I'll be happy to help out in any way I could. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other public comment. So we'll move back to discussion by the commission. Further discussion by the commission. Commissioner Kerr.
In the interest of time, I'd like to try a motion, and my motion is subject to many amendments or friendly motions, but essentially what I'd like to propose is a motion that the SEJC's equity plan include a public hearing along the lines of a community forum in a socially distanced place, which will allow members of the community to participate in the equity plan going forward.
All right, so we have a motion on the table from Commissioner Kerr. Commissioner Marks.
Second.
We have a motion that is seconded. Further discussion of the motion. Commissioner Marks.
Could we put a time frame in there? I mean, I don't want this to happen like 6 months from now.
Commissioner Kerr, I think that's a question for you if you want to take it, or you don't have, if you want, only if you want to.
I believe that the equity plan includes a public survey, and I would like to suggest that this public hearing and public participation in the process without mailing or telephone or electronic engagement happen at the same time as the mailing or the however. How can I condense that? That the public hearing be can have a conjuncture with the electronic mailing of the survey. Does that work, Margie?
Yeah, I'm just not sure what time frame we're talking about.
And I have to say in response, I don't know the time frame of the survey, so I simply am tying it to an electronic survey or a telephone survey, however that formats itself, that it also have a public hearing as part of that.
Well, the only thing I would say about that is I feel like people are hungry now for this. And
I would agree with you, but I'm admonished by the statements by the experts that we're working with that you have to go slow to go fast. So hunger may be something that we can sustain at this point. It's not something that we need to rush on, and that we should tie it in with the voice of the rest of the community, and make it work that way.
So we have a motion. We've got some follow-up discussion and questions. My only question, I favor the idea. And, if we move on forward on this motion, then that's great. I think the other possibility that we would have would be to see if we can iron out the schedule of the survey and our follow-up meetings next week. And then, if we did not pass at this meeting, then we could take it up next meeting with a specific time frame attached on September 1. But if it's the will of the commission to act on it now, I certainly don't object to that. I think there's value in going quickly. There's also value in defining, but there's all, and that we just have to figure out how to balance those two important things. Commissioner Grossman, I think I saw you.
Yeah, I don't think it matters whether we pass a motion now or we don't pass a motion now. We're generally in favor of the idea of having an event. That's fine, and becomes a question of designing the event. What is it actually going to look like? Because if it's done well, this could be great, and if it's done badly, it could be chaotic. So,
yeah.
So that becomes the important thing. If it were at the same time related to the survey, I would just say I've seen that happen in a community, and it's very interesting when you can come in and say, this is what we learned from the survey. Does this fit with your experience? What does this mean to you? That's one possibility. But I think the important thing is that there needs to be some work designing an event that will be important and engaging. And I'm fine with voting for a motion if that will move us along. But until we see a plan, it's kind of hard to know what we're talking about.
Right.
If I may offer a suggestion, the commission is going to make an update to the council in September. I think probably the second meeting in September. So perhaps you include this type, the type of outreach that would include a community event as part of your update to seek input from the council on this idea. And either if you make a motion now, we would include it. It could be included as part of the update when you go to council in September, or you can make it on September 1st. It's up to you.
So what's our will? We have a motion and it's been seconded. We can act on it, or we can, decide to reconsider. What's the will of the body?
I guess I want to clarify one thing that Judy had said, and my brain is leaving me. I'm sorry, I'm zoomed out. But we're talking about moving this thing forward. From what Judy said, it's already in the plan, so there was no point in even doing this motion. Is that what you're saying, Judy?
Commissioner Curry?
No, to clarify my point, I don't know what the plan is for a community survey. And I think, Margie, what you would like to see is a community event to supplement the actions of whatever community survey is recommended by the consultants.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, yes, correct.
But clarify, I don't know what the plan for survey is. I don't know.
Me either.
And I think that the consultants will go over the plan of the survey at the September 1st meeting. The consultants are coming back to the commission September 1st to discuss the survey.
So with that information, it may be appropriate for us to move ahead with a motion as a commission that we prefer that this, whatever the recommendation is, that it include this kind of community engagement one-on-one or in a public forum, as opposed to simply telephone or electronic communication.
Certainly act on that. Does that get us closer? You made the original motion, Commissioner Kerr, so I will assume that your restatement, is okay with the Commissioner Kerr who introduced the first motion. I think Commissioner Marks may have seconded. Does the formulation that Commissioner Kerr had continue to work for you, Margie?
Yes.
Do we want to do that as a motion, as a sort of revised motion, Commissioner Kerr? Is that what you were thinking?
So the revised motion would then be, the revised motion for the commission to decide on tonight would then be, we as a commission prefer that any survey that is taken by the consultants include a public forum where people present in person and survey information and education is provided.
Commissioner Marks, do you want to sustain your second? Okay. Are we ready to vote on this? Do we need more discussion? Okay. Not seeing anyone calling for more discussion. How about we move to a vote? Commissioner Gary?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Grossman?
Yes.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So thank you for that. I think it's an important thing and appreciate you all bringing it forward. Commissioner Marks, we're now on number 7, future agenda items. I have some, but first want to hear from other commissioners announcing with their requests for future agenda items. Commissioner Grossman.
I would like to have the conversation we had talked about how we could supplement the minutes so that we could provide more information to the community. It may be a different document or a different format or something in addition to the action minutes. I'm not saying we can't have the action minutes, but I think the general feeling is we need to find some way to be more communicative. So that and that's something I would like to have us talk more about.
Tim, to add that to our September 1, you had raised it at our previous meeting. So appreciate that, Commissioner Grossman. Commissioner Marks?
Were we finished with the mental health issue? Or do we want to talk more about what's going to happen? I'm sorry, my brain is like fried.
You mean in terms of?
Should it be on the agenda for the next meeting?
Yeah. I think it makes sense to agendize it if we don't have follow-up from, staff has indicated that they're seeking more information from the county. They've also indicated they don't have a certainty that information will arrive. But I think we could agendize it. We were finding out about this, today, that we could agendize it so that we've had time to think, perhaps to pursue our own, investigations and to make any discussions along with any updates on the September 1 meeting. I think I see Isabel coming in.
I just want to add, I was looking at your work plan, and Berkeley Mental Health or mental health services in general is not on your work plan. So anything beyond, receiving a presentation and wanting to do more research or follow up, I think may have to go to council as an amendment to your work plan. But you can flesh that out as part of your next discussion if you'd like to at your next meeting. But just want to make that point that it could potentially necessitate a work plan amendment if you do decide to dive into mental health services further.
So we could include a broader based discussion of what we want to do going forward with that acknowledgement. Commissioner Geary.
Yes, I just wanted to go along with Commissioner Grossman about more talks on getting information out. I mean, if we can also identify other areas in the community. I mean, we still have Albany Hills. There's so many places that we haven't really been able to identify specifically on how to get information out if people, you know, are not on social media. And even if they are, how do we bring the audience to us so we can have more input and people can give a clear understanding of what this commission is doing. So I would like us to go in depth on identifying places to provide information for the community.
Maybe a combined agenda item on information that includes discussion of the minutes and also continued reflection on communicating about meetings. I think I saw Commissioner Kerr.
Yeah, I'd like to, I mean, I appreciate Isabel's commentary about the work plan, but I'd like to suggest that before the next meeting, someone from the commission, and I'm willing to volunteer to do this, draft a potential letter to Keith Carson asking our county commissioner what he understands as the current budgetary allocations to the city of Albany and the current budgetary allocations to the city of Albany with regard to mental health funding and how that will be implemented going forward. I think an inquiry from us is appropriate. It may also be appropriate to come from the council, but I'm willing to take the lead on this and suggest a letter to the commission to be forwarded to the council at the September 1st.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerr. I think, you know, additionally, I would add that it has been raised, something that we could look into either through the Diversity Inclusivity Subcommittee or all of us together. But where staff input would be helpful would be to look at the city's election materials around issues of gender and gender definition of places where it says he, she, or his, her, and could say he, she, they, his, her, them. And I think the input on from staff that we could utilize is where is it in those election materials that utilize he, she, or his, her, are the materials under the control of the city of Albany, in which case, you know, we might well act, you know, relatively quickly to request a review of those, and which of those materials are established by the state or by the Alameda County Board of Elections, in which case, you know, we might be needing to investigate how, what the pathways for change in that case may be. So that's something that I would love to update on if we can get it, of which of those election materials are really under the control of Albany and whether we can start making changes on the gender designation just to add they and them where applicable in those for the ones that we do control. And then I think there were requests in public comments and in updates for an email correspondence to just ask for, I know we've gotten this before, but to ask for updates on the city's policy on RV removal, where we stand, you know, now as a general policy question, and how, you know, as that relates to things that we do engage with. Anything else? And I expect that we'll have updates from our subcommittees on for the Equity Action Plan as well. Anything else? All right. Well, with that, I think we bring this meeting to a close. We appreciate everyone sticking through this meeting. And our next meeting is on September the 1st at 7:30 p.m. And presumably through the same medium of Zoom for the indefinite future. So appreciate your work, appreciate the work of staff and other commissioners making it happen, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good night.
Right.